So as Ghana approaches its 2024 general elections, the country stands at a crossroads, reflecting on its past, grappling with its present, and hoping for a future that can only be forged through the collective will of its people. The air is thick with anticipation, but also with discontent. Discontent that has brewed for over years of economic hardships, political maneuvering, and an ever-growing gap between the promises made by those in power and the realities felt by the average Ghanaian. For many, this election are not just a choice of leadership, they are a referendum on the country's direction, a country where protests have become the voice of the people. From hashtag Fix the Country to the hashtag Fix It protests, the streets have been filled with the cries of the oppressed, the disillusioned, and the marginalized, all demanding that the state address its failures, whether it's the rising cost of living, corruption, or the lack of real opportunities. Ghanaians have raised their voices chanting for better roads, better healthcare, better education, and more economic opportunities. The people have had enough of broken promises, and their demand is clear. It's time for change. But in the midst of these calls for reform, two major political parties, the NPP and NDC, remain at the forefront of Ghana's political landscape. Their manifestos have been unveiled, their promises made, and the race for the presidency is heating up. However, this election comes with a unique twist. One of the main contenders is none other than the former President John Dramani Mahama, a man who in 2016 was voted out after his first term in office. Now he returns to the ring seeking a second chance at leading the nation. The question is, what has changed in the last 8 years since he has left office? Has he learned from past mistakes? Is he the leader Ghanaians need to restore their faith in the country's future? Or has time and political experience dulled his connection with the averages and the struggles of the average Ghanaian? Now, while Mahama's return is expected to energize his base, it has sparked fierce controversies. To some, he represents a symbol of hope, a familiar face who understands the challenges of governance. And to others, he's a reminder of a time when promises were broken, when the economy struggled, and when political instability loomed large. And then there's the ruling NPP, which is led by the incumbent Vice President Mahamudu Bawumia, whose political ascendancy has been shaped by years of service and leadership in various government positions. Now, his bid for the presidency reflects an ambition to continue the work of the current administration, even as many Ghanaians question whether this path will lead to the change they so desperately seek. So, as we look at the economic decline, the rise in unemployment, and the frustration felt in every corner of Ghana, the question still remains: can a fresh face in the presidency restore the country to its former glory, or will it be more of the same? There's also Ghana's diversity, which has been another point of contention. While it has been touted as a strength, it has also been a source of tension. The 2025 elections, or rather 2024 elections, are particularly fraught with ethnic and religious considerations, as both major candidates come from the northern part of the country. Yet, the deep-seated divisions and rivalries among ethnic groups, often exacerbated by political allegiances, continue to tear at the fabric of the country and the nation. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Nigeria. So as the country prepares to vote, it seems that the scars of the past are still fresh, and the questions of unity and inclusion loom large. Reminds me of an election in once great country of West Africa in 2023, something about Nigeria. Anyway, we're talking about Ghana. And through all this, Ghanaians are hoping for one thing: a future where their children can thrive, where their communities can flourish, where the government works for the people. They yearn for leaders who will bring an end to the political divisions, who will address the growing ethnic conflicts, and who will restore their faith in the institutions meant to serve them. As Ghanaians head to the polls, Ghana's fate hangs in the balance. What will the future hold for this vibrant, dynamic country? Will the 2024 elections be a turning point, a moment of reckoning where change is finally realized, or will it be another chapter in the long struggle for Ghanaian self-determination, where the same issues resurface and the same demands are left unaddressed? Well, ladies and gentlemen, only time will tell. But for now, one thing is certain: Ghana is at a pivotal moment in its history, and its people are demanding to be heard. And that's what we're going to do on the ballot. We are starting our live coverage of the Ghanaian elections, special live coverage for the 2024 Ghana general elections, live from Kumasi, Accra, and here in Lagos. Our correspondent will be live to join us. You're watching the live coverage of Ghana election. This is the ballot. You're welcome.
Well, good morning and welcome. Ghana, of course, not just Nigeria. You're welcome to the ballot for this morning. It's a special live coverage of the 2024 general elections. My name is Mazino Appeal, and of course, you have already met her. My co-anchor, Judith Atibi, is also with me here. We're coming to you live and bringing you all the action, analysis, and also updates from across the country of Ghana as they head to the polls in the highly anticipated elections.
That's right. Now, this is a very monumental day for the future of Ghana. Over the next 3 hours, we'll be guiding you through every twist and turn as voters cast their ballots, while we bring you expert insights, live updates from various regions, and a deep dive into the political dynamics shaping this election.
Well, yes, indeed. And of course, just as we are excited, they're also excited in Ghana, or maybe it's the other way around. They're excited in Ghana and we're excited here. And it's good to welcome you back here.
Even if it's
me.
Not breakfast. It's not breakfast extra today, this morning, is it?
You have no idea how we missed you.
Oh, goodness. Really? I was missed. Anyway, move on.
In any case, expect live reports from polling stations across the country. And of course, as you can see now, we have live images already as the procession is continuing beginning actually in Ghana, with the votes being cast right now. It's going to give us a very interesting look at what things are like as we compare it to what the Nigerian instance is.
Yes.
And like we said from before, we have our correspondents who would be giving us updates on everything that's happening in Ghana. And as you saw already, Bennett was, well, I don't know why he was looking back and forth, but Bennett, we are ready for you, Bennett. Okay, Bennett, good morning, and it's good to have you on the show this morning, live from Ghana. If you'd please give us an idea of what it is like where you're at, so that we can begin this live coverage of the events that are happening in Ghana as the elections take place right now. Bernard?
Mazino, good morning. Judith,
good morning.
Yes, bright and early in Ghana. I'd like to throw a little shade at Nigeria. So unlike Nigeria, they were out here very early. 7 a.m. is the time they were giving, and 7 a.m. people are out already. I'm in State Experimental School here in Kumasi, and as you can see around me, election process has started as it should. Voters come here first of all. They check their details, ensure that their names are here, and I think this is their credit. This here is the machine where they get their thumbprint, and from here pick ballot papers all the way down and begin to cast their vote. So it's a seamless process, at least here that we are. Everything has been moving smoothly. Even we, on our accreditation cards, basically, all we had to do was send in our details put on the card, and then there's a QR code such that anybody who wants to verify our authenticity would scan the code, and all our details would pop up on their devices, their phones, basically, stating that this is official from the Electoral Commission of Ghana. So there's nothing to hide here, pretty much. And I say I'm impressed that 7 a.m., everybody's here bright and early, and voting has started.
Bernard, very interesting that you should start the way you did. I don't know how long you've been in Ghana. How long have you been in Ghana at this point? How many days now?
Since Thursday, so that's 2 days, about 2 to 3 days.
Third day? Because you're beginning to sound very Ghanaian, because you're already like going on that Ghana-Nigeria spree, going like it's very different here in Ghana. But it's good to know that everything is actually taking place as it should be. quite unlike what we've experienced many times here in Nigeria. However, I'd like to find out exactly about the people that are coming out. How, well, it's so early, but people are coming out. What kind of people are coming out at this point?
All kinds of people. So I'll let me see if I can move around, and then you'll take a look at those who are voting now. You can see we have the elderly, we have young people, we have men, we have women. Basically, everybody who has registered to vote and is prepared to vote is out here casting their vote. And I hear that the process will be, from 7 a.m. till 5 p.m. if I'm not mistaken. So now you can see those on the queue, at least for this side. There are different polling units in this school where we are. So different people, but all and sundry, as the saying goes. Everybody who is ready to vote, who has registered to vote and has decided to come out, is out here ready and willing to cast their vote. No discrimination whatsoever, based on what I can observe.
One thing I noticed about this is the orderliness so far, just looking at the queue there, looking at the distance between where the ballots are, the boxes are, and then where the exercise is actually happening, and how they're far back. Those who are waiting to also cast their votes are very far back, very orderly, right? And I'd just like for you to talk about the preparedness leading up to today, election starting 7 a.m. How was it like for the Ghana Electoral Commission and just the preparation since Thursday? They've been there lining up to today. And what's the difference between theirs and ours?
So I would, before we even got to Ghana, I've been following up on information on the website of the Electoral Commission, and they've been keeping us up to date with pretty much everything that they can. As at the last time I went there, number of all registered voters have been put up on the portal, on the website. I think reaching up to about 18.7 million, if I'm not mistaken, but 18 million plus registered voters should be casting their vote or prepared to cast their vote. Over 40,000 polling units scattered across the country. So basically, it's about transparency and information dissemination, basically. The Electoral Commission has been doing quite well, from all I can gather, and that's why you can see all of this. In the last few reports I did leading up to today, I got to ask a couple of questions. One of the questions I asked was, the faith that they have in the Electoral Commission. Many of them said that they felt the Electoral Commission has done well so far up until now. There were a few complaints, regular things you would have, saying that last election there were some polling units where materials didn't arrive on time, and so it caused some kind of delay. But I mean, this morning you can see your guess is as good as mine. Materials were here on time. The voters are also here on time. So the earlier the better. And if they start early, I believe that they will be able to wrap it up early. So it's a pass mark for me from the Electoral Commission, at least so far, based on what I've been able to observe from here. Of course, from here, we'll visit other polling units to see if it's the same thing or to see if there will be any challenges so far.
Well, Bernard, many thanks for just giving us an update. We definitely will come back to you for more update there. Bernard Akede, our correspondent. Bernard Akede, our correspondent, live from Kumasi, Ghana, there from one of the polling units, just to give us more update as elections have commenced early at 7 a.m. in the morning.
So as Ghana decides, let's focus on one of Africa's most enduring democratic experiments. Ghana heads to the polls for its 9th successive election, general election, since returning to multi-party democracy in 1992. This election is not just another transition, it is a defining moment against the backdrop of economic challenges, regional instability, and declining trust in public institutions. Sounds like Nigeria.
Oh, yes, indeed. Now, with the ruling New Patriotic Parties, Alhaji Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, and the opposition National Democratic Congress, which is John Dramani Mahama, squaring off, the stakes couldn't be higher. So will Ghana uphold its democratic legacy, or are there cracks beginning to show in this model of African democracy? And so joining us to unpack these issues are two distinguished guests. From Accra, we have Isaac Agie, an analyst with SBM Intelligence, who will provide insight in this election's political and economic implications. And also joining us is Obed Uwosu Adie. He is the convener of the Ghana Civil Society Cocoa platform, and he will help us understand the intersection of governance and the lives of everyday Ghanaians, particularly in the agricultural sector. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
It's a pleasure
Thank you
to
for
be
having
here.
us.
Thank you. Isaac, let's get started. Let's start with you, shall we? And just talk about, with the broader look at the bigger picture. Ghana has been lauded as a beacon of democracy in West Africa since 1992. Yet this election is unfolding amidst, widespread economic challenges and a worrying trend of coup across a sub-region. All right, we're looking at Mali and all the other countries. How do you think these factors are shaping the electoral atmosphere for this election?
Well, I think the first impression came in when we had the 2024 Afrobarometer report, where so you still have somewhere around 8 out of 10 Ghanaians who prefer the democratic way of electing leaders. But we all know that the cloth of democracy has been soiled by the high rise in economic hardship across the length and breadth of the West African, bloc, and that makes it difficult for Ghana at the moment. And just like you put it, this year Ghana is possibly being used as a litmus paper at this moment to test the democratic temperature in West Africa. Why? Because this is a space that has had the highest number of coups anywhere in the world. We've had Mali, we have Niger, we have Burkina Faso, and other pockets of coup across West Africa. And so at this moment, although Ghana has enjoyed free transfer of power, very smooth transfer of power since 1992, what makes this year's election a bit different is the fact that the country is experiencing one of its harshest economic hardships currently, and we know that this has the same reasons that some coup leaders actually cited in the template that we've seen across the sub-region. But the good news is that if you gauge the mood in the Afrobarometer report, even before coming into this year's election, you still will have the sense that still majority of Ghanaians prefer that democratic ways should still be used as the only way to elect leaders for the country. Although if you look at the trend analysis since the time that Afrobarometer started tracking this indicator, you could see that Ghana's figures are actually on the decline, although you still have a number of Ghanaians who believe that democracy is the only way to go in terms of electing leaders.
Well, that's scary because Ghana is actually the beacon of the democracy when it comes to the African continent, and we're hoping that those numbers stay up. But then again, let's take a look at strategy. Let's talk about two major contenders here. Let's talk about Vice President Dr. Bawumia and also John Mahama. What strategies are they using to get voters on their side through the course from before up until this day?
That's my question, right?
Yes, Isaac. My apologies. Yes, that's a question.
Great. So let's start with the incumbent government, which is being represented by the Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. Now they are using what we call the free SHS strategy. The free SHS strategy that is the key flagship program of this government, the Akufo-Addo administration, where they introduced free tertiary education in the country starting 2017. That has been their horn in all their campaigns in this year's election, that free senior high school, where according to them more than 5 million Ghanaian children have actually benefited from free senior high school program. And in fact, that's a strategy because you could see that those kids who actually enjoyed free education started enjoying it when they were 15 years, and that was 2017. So if you do the actual studies, you will realize that most of them are now eligible to vote. And so if you look at the over 700,000 newly registered voters who are actually on this year's more than 18 million registered voters, that tells you that a significant component of that are the students who actually enjoy the free senior high school, and the government is using this as a strategy to make sure that they get the biggest chunk of that pie. If you look at the main opposition party, which is the National Democratic Congress, the NDC, led by former President John Dramani Mahama, They are using the strategy that was used in the US, where they know that a majority of Ghanaians are not concerned about the economy. And just like in the US, the economy was the #1 issue that voters were worried about. And that's the same strategy being used by the main opposition party. They have said that, look, consider what is going on at the moment. Look into your life. Are you happy? I mean, 4 years or let's say 8 years ago, if you feel that the hardship is too much, if you feel you cannot afford, goods and services, if you feel that the cedi depreciation is affecting you, if you feel that, I mean, if you go to the hospital, you struggle to pay your health bills, and if you are not able to cater for your family, in fact, all you're talking about is cost of living, transport, fuel, food, what have you. Inflation, which peaked around 54% in December 2024, now is still around 23%. This is the strategy that the main opposition party is using. And at the moment, we all know the dislike for incumbents across the world at the moment. But what we also know in Ghana's election is that although the main opposition party has the momentum on their side, and they are using the current circumstances to campaign, it is still very close to call in this year's election. This has actually been the closest election to call, and you can compare it to what happened in 2008, where, I mean, nobody was able to get that 50% plus one, requirement, and the election had to go to a round-up in 2008. And we know that the then opposition party actually won, the elections with just about 40,000 votes. Are we going to see the same way? Are we going to see a government that came to power in 2016 with a vote margin of more than or close to 1 million to one that has been reduced to a little below 600,000, and maybe to what happened in 2018? So, I mean, if you're talking about strategy or campaign strategy, we know that, I mean, the current, incumbents are using the free senior high school program, and the fact that they say they are going to run what they call a flat tax in the country. And then you have the main opposition party also campaigning using the current economic circumstances. And they're saying that, look, this government has heaped on you a number of nuisance taxes, including the electronic transaction levy, COVID-19 levy, and then also what we call the pollution levy, including what most youth are not happy with, which is the 1% withholding tax, betting tax on their earnings.
Now, very insightful analysis there from you, Isaac. Many thanks. But let's also bring the part of governance into this conversation, right? And how it impacts the people. And let me come to you, Obed. This election is not just about who governs. It's about how governance impacts the people. And we've seen, from Isaac's analysis and what we've seen on ground, Ghana's economy is still recovering from the effects of high inflation. There's austerity measures ongoing, and there's also debt restructuring. How are these, bread and butter issues affecting voter sentiment going into this election?
Well, thank you very much for the question, and I do agree with all the points that Isaac made. Well, on governance issues, just as Isaac said, this election, the opposition party is making it about your life, how you are living your life, how the economy is affecting you. But what we also need to understand, and one point that Isaac made that I want to put into perspective, is that the current government is running on its record, and the incumbent or the opposition party has been in government before. So it's not like they are running on a clean slate. So when it comes to governance, when it comes to corruption, when it comes to the way of life of the people, we have had an example. We have lived under the governance of John Mahama before. And so when you compare the John Mahama 4 years to the Dramani Mahama, to the Bawumia and Akufo-Addo 8 years, there is a comparison to make there. And when you ask the youth especially, they will tell you that currently the hardship is bigger than the experience under the John Mahama administration, because when you look at corruption, incidences of corruption, there has been a lot of incidences of corruption where the presidency has been seen as the seat of corruption, actually giving white papers on documents that are sent there for his action, and he doesn't take action. So all these things are playing at the back of the youth and also the voters when it comes to governance. Again, when you look at the Mo Ibrahim Index that has been published, you realize that the governance structure or the governance system in Ghana, or perception about transparency governance in Ghana, is dropping as compared to what used to exist under the John Mahama example. So all these are played out when you go to the street, when you talk to ordinary Ghanaians. The things they keep telling you is that, yes, we have lived under this government before, and we have also lived under John Mahama, and we are going to make our decision based on the conditions that existed. Of course, the argument that the incumbent is making is that John Dramani Mahama did not live under COVID-19. He didn't face this very, very economic crisis that faced the world. And so that comparison cannot be made. But it's politics, and it's African politics. And people will play on the emotions and intelligence of the voters using every shred of data that they can gather. So on the ground, in respect to governance, there is a comparison happening, and the people, most of the people that have engaged, especially the farmers, the cocoa farmers that we have engaged with, they are telling us that when you look at the percentage of increment in the cocoa price compared to what we enjoyed under the previous government, with respect to the international market price, you realize that they felt it was better under the previous government. So a lot is not going well for the current or the incumbent government. And so those are some of the sentiments that are playing out good.
Obed, it's very interesting how you and Isaac have actually plotted this out. It's very clear now exactly what each party strategy is. On one side, you have incentive versus on the other side, you have the anguish that the people have been going through. And this is what the governments, or rather the two parties, are trying to leverage on. But however, would you say that perhaps the incentives that have been, the incumbent had 80 years to actually plan out its incentives heading towards these elections. Would you say that has sunk its tooth or gotten deep-rooted impact in the people, that it might force some kind of good competition for the opposition who have chosen to go with the sentiments of the people, the anguish? Would you say that this is both strategies are contending properly, 50-50, or maybe not so? Obed, please.
Oh, thank you once again. You need to consider the block of voters. The average Ghanaian voter is probably not as informed as you would expect them to be. And so you need to look at who is voting and on what issues they are voting on. When you look at the youth, and especially those that are educated, and you realize that they're considering some of the digitalization that the current government has brought into the space. The Ghana card, which has become your tax identification number, which you are able to do a lot of things with it. And just recently, they piloted the e-gate. When you have a Ghana card and you have traveled outside Ghana and you come in, you can use your Ghana card and you just walk straight without any immigration hassle. So all these technology, all this digitization that the incumbent government has brought within the educated class, you realize that people are really receiving it very well. But when you go to the ground at the community level, people feel like this is it's not addressing the bread and butter issue that I am really particular about. So it depends on the voting bloc that you want to assess. And what we have realized is that, especially in Ghana, the Ashanti region that votes mostly for the NPP are generally rural communities, and you realize that they really do not really care about some of this digitization and the incentives, as you put it, that the current government has brought. So that is why most people are saying that if the current government is not able to hold on strongly to its stronghold of Ashanti region, then they are bound to lose this election. And from what is playing out on, especially at the public space, it does appear that momentum is on the side of the opposition party with respect to even the stronghold of the ruling party. So yes, there are incentives, there are a lot of new things, technology that the current government has brought into the space that the average Ghanaian, educated average Ghanaian, will see as very good, and that it has the potential to propel Ghana into a certain space within the African continent. But for the ordinary rural Ghanaian voter, all those digitization, all those incentives are not really playing out very well for them. What is playing out very well for them is the free SHS policy that Isaac mentioned. And personally, in my house, I've had 3 of my nephews and nieces going through the process without paying any fees. So you realize that most of those communities, and especially the households that have enjoyed the free SHS, they will see this policy as reflecting in their lives, and they will vote for the incumbent government. So there are a lot of dynamics that are playing out, and it is difficult to make a conclusive decision without taking into consideration the diverse voting blocks and all that.
I wanted to stop you there because that was the exact reason why I asked that question. How far did that effort go when it comes to the incumbent? How far did they go in touching people's lives? So these people that you're speaking about, that you're saying that perhaps maybe they might be the ones who would vote back in the incumbent. What proportion of Ghanaians, how far did it go? Did it go into the villages, or was it just an urban thing? Just so that we can get an idea of the voters that we're expecting to come out and vote for the incumbent today?
Well, with respect to some of the digitization policies and strategies that were introduced, it went across the country, but those who are feeling the effect the more are those in the urban communities and urban areas. So you need Ghana card to do banking transactions. And the statistics in Ghana show that it's only the elites and the educated that does banking. Most of the rural communities, they keep their money under their bed and all that. So it has been done across board, but those who are really having the effects on their lives are the elites within or the educated within the community. But like I did say, there are other policies that are also touching the lives of the rural community, and key among it is the flagship program for the incumbent, which is the free SHS, which I can attest that has gone very, very deep down in the community level. There are some rural communities that since they set up the community, nobody has gone to secondary school from that community. But because of the free SHS, they have been able to get their wards or their children being able to go to secondary school, and now being at least secondary school graduates. And so these are some of the things happening. Maybe the other key issue is the National Health Insurance Scheme. Ghana has a National Health Insurance Scheme that is open to everybody that contributes to the social security. What this government has done is to decentralize it and also expand it and digitize it. So now you don't need to go and register. You can use your Ghana card ID number, and then you can enroll onto the National Health Insurance Scheme. So these are things or interventions that are touching the lives of the ordinary community member. Then you can also talk about the agricultural sector, planting for food and jobs, which is one of the flagship programs of the current government when it comes to agriculture. And you realize that they provide a lot of incentives for farmers, and at a point there were bumper harvests, but of course, due to road network and other things, we're still not getting the food in the cities and towns that needed them the most. So there have been a lot of interventions that have cut across the country, but depending on which one you weigh, you realize that some of them are really, really inuring to the benefit of those who are in the cities. For example, they cancelled road tolls. So across the country, this current government cancelled road tolls. It had a lot of backlash, I must say. But ordinarily, when you speak to motorists, taxi drivers and trotro drivers, they are happy because they don't have to pay road tolls and all the hours that they spend in traffic. They don't need to do that. So all these things are some of the interventions, but you need to juxtapose it against which building block that you are assessing, and on what issues that they care the most about that's influencing their voting.
Obed, is very interesting because everything, I don't know, Judith, I have to come to you and tell you this.
Right.
I don't know, everything Obed has said, he touched on health, he touched on amenities, he touched on road tolls. What else did you touch on again?
Agriculture.
Agriculture. It seems like the incumbent is doing a lot, and if you want to compare it to the Nigerian instance,
I always say that when it comes to West Africa, or even any African country, particularly West Africa, all countries in West Africa, it's almost like it's the same side or different sides of the same coin. 9 times out of 10, that's what you find. But let me come to you, Isaac, and talk about the similarities that we've seen. One of them is security concerns. Going into this election, there have been concerns about violence. During the last 2020 elections, there were violence that broke out during that time. What are the key factors driving fear of election-related violence this year? And how prepared do you think that security agencies are, to tackle violence in this election cycle?
Well, when you have elections that are close as, like it's always on the knife edge, that tells you that incidents of violence are likely to occur. But generally, Ghanaian elections have been free, fair, and transparent, devoid of any form of significant violence. But it's human life that we are talking about here. So even if one person dies, it is still important to talk about, especially what happened in Techiman South. In this year's election, the projection is that you could have a number of violence, looking at how tight the race is going to be. And you have an incumbent that has, an opposition party that is trying for the third time to come back to power. They tried to maintain power in 2016, it did not work. Tried to come back in 2020, it did not work. They're trying to come back again in 2024. And remember that they had a lot of issues with the 2020 elections. They had a lot of issues with how people were actually treated in Techiman South, for instance, where a number of people died. But what we are learning, or what the information that we have, is that in this year's election, the police is beefing up security. And in fact, the military are being taken out of the arrangement at the moment, the immediate arrangement, in terms of interventions. They only be needed. They will only be used as the last resort when they have to come in. And Obed can attest to this fact that since last 2 weeks, you be in your house, you see, you hear the sounds of helicopters, and if you're on the streets, you see, police vehicles. Police visibility is almost everywhere. And in terms of the total number of deployment this year, we've never seen any number like that this year where, for instance, what is beautiful is that you're going to have a whole information center that is being established or put together by the Ghana Police Service. And what they seek to do is to respond to issues and also help to fight mis and disinformation also in the space. Why is this important? Because this is our first real social media election.
Right.
The closest we had was 2020. But this is an election that, most of the campaign was actually done on TikTok, on Facebook, and on the social media platform. And we know the tons of misinformation and disinformation and also fake news, deep fake out there. And the police are, this will sometimes result to some, violent activities in terms of spreading mis and disinformation. And the police are actually going to set up a center to debunk some of this. They are going to talk to the media and address Ghanaians from that side. But in terms of violence, we are projecting at SBM Intelligence that we may have a higher number compared to what we saw in the 2020 elections, looking at how tight the race will be. But we are also looking at how the police is hoping to neutralize or respond to some of these projections.
Isaac, I'm really glad we're talking about misinformation and disinformation is spreading during this campaign. But due to the intelligence that you have, what are the contributing factors? What are the cause behind this disinformation and misinformation around? Is it just because this is the first ever type of social media based elections that we're seeing, or is there more to it than that it just missed the eye?
There's definitely more to it. Both parties know that, this is a country that you have a significant number of people who are not literate, or they are not able to possibly read between the lines. And that's a significant part of the voter population. And so how many Ghanaians, or how many of the rural Ghanaians even know between deepfake? They simply do not know. All they believe is that I heard Bawumia's voice, I heard Mahama's voice. And so both political parties know the benefit of, deepfake, misinformation and disinformation at this moment. And that is why they are using it. And that makes journalism and even, security in Ghana even a bit complex, because now if you're a journalist, you need to learn how to debunk mis and disinformation and fake news. But the motivation is that both political parties are aware of the political capital in this mis and disinformation. In fact, I was on a X, I think about 3 days ago, where definitely, I mean, on X, people are able to read between the lines, but you could still see that people are boldly sharing content that you can just by a click of a button know that this is deepfake, this is AI generated, and it's become like a rebuttal. If MPP decides to release a content that is generated using deepfake, the MPP, the NDC will come and rebut with the same content using that same, technology. And so it's made Ghana's election a bit, complex this year in terms of adding that level to the security situation where, we believe that with a very high, dissemination of fake news, this could add to the number of violence activities that we may see across the length and breadth of the country. So it is the political capital at the end that's actually motivating both political parties to actually engage in this.
Very interesting times, I would say, for the elections. Obed, let me ask you about the growing mistrust in institutions. We've seen this, and you talked about this as well in your earlier submissions. But let's talk about this in regards to the Electoral Commission and the judiciary in Ghana. How crucial is civil society when it comes to bridging this gap and ensuring transparency in, when it comes to governance and governing?
That's an interesting question. For a very long time, Ghana has been seen as a democratic country, but there is this African proverb that when you see a forest, you think it's all together, but when you get closer, you realize that each tree is separate. It's the same thing in Ghana. When you are outside, you think everything is rosy, but when you get closer, you realize that there are cracks. And there have been cracks everywhere. When you go to the judiciary, there is a lot of mistrust from the opposition parties to the government when it comes to appointment of judges to the Supreme Court. That has become one of the major tussles in recent years. And not just that, but some of the rulings that these justices that have been appointed have meted out. You realize that when it doesn't go in favor of the opposition, they always begin to cry foul. Not just only the opposition, but even civil society. We have had the cause to question some of the decisions that are made with respect to judicial decisions and appointments in recent years. And that is one of the things that led to the massive demonstration that we saw. It was the passage of a law, the LI 2452, which gave rights to people to enter forest reserves to mine. And that is what created all these campaign and all these protests on the streets when people rose up against illegal mining and galamsey. And so yes, there is. And then the second, probably very, very disturbing governance challenge or the crack that we are seeing is how the government reacts to publications of corruption or incidences of corruption within the government. Yes, this government appointed or set up the office of the special prosecutor, but civil society has had the cause to question the motive and even the commitment of the government to resource the office of the special prosecutor to undertake its duty, its independent duty. There have been several cases that has gone to the office of the special prosecutor that, especially civil society, I'm usually using civil society and not the opposition, just to let you know that it's not just the opposition, but civil society, independent civil society, have questions about some of the outcome of those investigations. A key one is the Siagapa money, and this minister, they found a lot of money hidden in her home, and she couldn't explain how she got the money. But when it went to the office of the special prosecutor, nothing concrete came out of it. And so there is a growing mistrust even among how the independently appointed institutions operate. And one of the most disturbing decisions that was made by this government was the termination of the appointment of the Auditor General. The Auditor General, who was seen as very independent, very efficient, for no apparent reason, his his appointment or his contract was terminated with a lot of political undertones. So all these governance things that are happening within the space is creating that mistrust and also agitation among the opposition, and also to a very large extent civil society are also having cause to question the commitment of the incumbent government to our democratic credential. But like I always say, this election is about comparing records. And when you also look at what we experienced under the previous government, not so different. And so it creates that kind of, would I want to shift from this system to another system when I'm not too sure, or at least I have lived under them before and I know what they are also capable of doing. And so all these things are creating a lot of tension and mistrust within the system, especially when it comes to the judicial decisions and some of the independent bodies that have been set up by the constitution, but because of a lot of political decisions, they are not being effective as they are supposed to be.
Obed, there's one thing that's clear from both your submission, Obed and Isaac. It's clear that there's a yearning for stability and for progress when it comes to just governance in Ghana and really for West Africa. But Ghana is the beacon of democracy, and this is a litmus test indeed. And we hope to see what today would, pan out to be. Only time will tell. Well, Bernard, as I said, Bernard, Obed and Isaac, many thanks for doing this with us. We appreciate you for coming on and taking out the time this morning to give us a more in-depth analysis on how the elections will pan out today. Isaac Agie, he is analyst with SBM Intelligence. We have Obed as well. Obed is part of the CSO. There's a convener of the Ghana Civil Society COCO platform, and they joined us together to have an in-depth discussion on Ghana's democracy. Once again, many thanks, gentlemen, for coming on.
Concerns about out-and-out violence. I think it's concerns about simmering tensions boiling over. Since 1992, this is the 9th general election that we will have in Ghana. And Ghana has built a reputation on always having peaceful elections and a peaceful transition of power. That is something that is the underpinning and fundamental to this, the Fourth Republic. And so I don't think there's concerns that there will be out-and-out violence. It's not like in some other countries across Africa and indeed around the world where you have armed police on the streets, perhaps with AK-47s manning the polling stations. It's not like that here. There's a couple of police officers in this station. You might be able to see them in my shot. But they are, observing, just sort of there to keep the peace. So I don't think it's a concern about out-and-out violence, but perhaps the police are here just to keep the peace and to keep the simmering tensions at an absolute minimum where they can.
Now, Afia, while you've been there and as you've perhaps maybe spoken with people, the voters there, have you identified any contentious issues that might determine how the votes might go for the individuals? Are they talking about, well, to give an example here in Nigeria, at such an event, you'll be hearing people talk about oil prices, petrol prices, electricity, and all the rest. Are there any such issues that the voters have been complaining about since you've been at the polling station?
Number one issue on everybody's minds is the economy. It's the soaring inflation that the country has seen, especially since, 2022. In December 2022, inflation in Ghana was at 54%. And so that is where people really, really have a problem, is the economy. Eggs are 150% more expensive than they were this time last year. Everything is more than doubled in price, and that's where people really, really have a problem. They cannot afford the things that they could afford back in December 2022. They can't afford to send their children to university, not so much school, because we know that schools are now mostly free. If you want to send your child to a good school, that is going to cost you, and that's what people can't afford. And so the economy is the number one issue on people's minds, and that is what they are voting with when they come to the voting booth. Another issue that people are talking about is digitization, and this is something that the NPP especially have been campaigning on, is the digitization, excuse me, it's a hard one to say, of the country. And that's basically getting the country online, making everything digital, whether that's from payments, whether that's sending people credit to their phones, doing their banking, paying for goods. The NPP have really campaigned on making Ghana a digital hub and a digital country. And that is something that people are really appreciating as well. But the economy, hands down, is the number one thing on people's minds. People want more money in their pockets. And actually, I think that's a symptom the world over when it comes to the elections. I covered the UK elections earlier on this year, the US elections as well. And people I've been speaking to in all these places when I've been covering elections, the economy is number one. And that's no different right here in Ghana.
And very interesting times indeed, I feel, actually put. Although you say 2022, I'm concerned. I'm just 2022, but we know that post-pandemic, really from 2020, we've seen a steady decline, inflationary around the world, and and Ghana just seems to be exacerbated. And just talking to the people and feeling the pulse of the people. About the economy, about the election, where are they leaning to regarding who they want to see, right? And this is not in any way try to talk about who the leader might be or who might win the election, but it's been the rhetoric has been somewhat a do or die affair for both. Whether it's the incumbent or the opposition, it's been a do or die affair. The opposition wants to come back after 8 years. They've been trying to get in, and there's now the incumbent, the vice president, running for presidency. Talking to the people and feeling the pulse, since you've been there on Thursday, what's the sentiment like, and what are they leaning to on their ballot?
Right, in saying that it is do or die for either candidate. On the NPP side, the slogan "Break the Eight," and that is all about trying to break the cycle of having either party in power for 8 years, 2 terms. It's never been done before. NPP supporters are adamant they can break that cycle and have another 4 years in power. NDC supporters, however, are adamant that John Mahama deserves a second term and that the NDC will bring about the change that the country needs. Lots of people that I've been speaking to, NDC supporters particularly, have said that they felt that the country was so much better, so much richer, and they had more money in their pockets under an NDC government. And they firmly believe that bringing back the NDC to power will fix the economy and will bring them more money in their pockets. NPP supporters, however, are saying that their work is not done. That yes, Ghana, like the whole world, has been through a very tough financial period, and the NPP is the only party that can steady the ship. As inflation has been falling, they are the party that say that they can keep inflation coming down. So it's very much do or die, or both sides, like you said, Judith. What I have been, or what I've gathered for the past 48 hours, being on ground, talking to people in the market, at the mall, in front of the polling stations, I'm not going to make a prediction about who will win, but I will say this: people are desperate for change. They are desperate for something different, and they are desperate for something better than what they have right now. Whether they feel that's a different leader in the NPP who can take the party in a different direction and do things differently, or whether it's a different party and a different leader altogether, change is the one thing that people really want.
Afi, I want to say thank you, but by the way, aren't you from Ghana? You're Ghanaian, aren't you? Are you? Yes, you are. So I guess we'll be celebrating your homecoming since you're back here.
I am very, very Ghanaian. I actually do have the right to vote in this election. I won't be voting this time round because I'll be spending my time talking to the lovely News Central viewers. But yes, I am.
Well, it's good to have you back in Africa. Let's just put it so. Thank you very much, Afia, and thank you for bringing us all the details. We'll be coming back to you, and of course, Bernard Akedi, who we were with earlier. Now, let's take a short break because we've got more guests that will be talking to us today on the ballot as we look as Ghana decides for 2024. So do stay tuned.
And you're welcome back as we continue our special live coverage of Ghana's 2024 general elections. It's a pivotal moment for this West African nation as citizens head to the polls amid rising poverty, a high cost of living, and the lingering effects of an economic crisis that has grappled the nation since 2022. Now, the stakes are high and the economy has emerged as the defining issue in this election, from inflation and debt restructuring to youth unemployment and poverty. Now, voters are looking for leadership that can steer Ghana towards recovery and sustainable growth.
Judith got out the glasses. That means we mean business this hour.
I read it, Joe.
In any case, today we'll take a closer look at how the economy challenges of the past few years have shaped voters' choices and also the potential implication for Ghana's future. So, this hour, joining us for this to discuss, we'll be having two guests, but first we're going to be starting with our very first guest who has joined us via video chat. Joining us is Etse Sikanku, Associate Professor at the University of Media Arts and also Communications in Ghana. Thank you for joining us, Etse. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you for coming on, Eche. I mean, let's get started and just talk about the political landscape in Ghana and how it is marked. It's been marked with, one would say, fiscal indiscipline, right? Particularly around election years. As voters head to the polls today, how do you think this the history of economic mismanagement would affect the ballot paper and their choices in this election?
Thank you very much. If I got you right, I got the part about economic mismanagement or something like that.
Fiscal indiscipline. There we go.
Oh, I get what you mean.
Yeah,
thank you very much. Definitely the economy is a major issue that is at play in this particular election. Many people have talked about the difficulties that they are facing. They've talked about their standard of living. They have talked about their purchasing power and how that really has been difficult over time. And the government has taken the blame for it, including what you've mentioned in terms of spending, in terms of the fiscal environment and infrastructure. And the government has come in for the blame as far as that is concerned. So I do think that on that particular indicator, the government wouldn't score a huge win over there. But of course, the government has also come out to talk about what has led to this. They've talked about the pandemic, the crisis, the war in Ukraine, and the import or the trade infrastructure that had existed at the time. But then at the same time, you've seen the presidential candidate himself admitting from time to time that, yes, he does recognize those difficulties. And so I think on this issue, yes, the incumbent does take the blame for it, and it will definitely feature in a very big way in the election.
Now, I'd say the opposition are, well, they're talking a big game. In their manifesto, they talked about, well, plenty of spendings when it comes to specific areas. However, if you put this on the backdrop of what the incumbent has done when it comes to making sure that their footprints are everywhere, especially in education, for instance, where they have the free education for secondary school pupils. And this has been on for a while, which has led up to the elections. You can imagine that this will inform the voters in a specific kind of way to their advantage. So when it comes to the opposition, these numbers that they have in their manifesto, do you think that these are proper numbers? Do you think that it's going to serve certain purposes, like, for instance, education? And how well will that compare to the past if they win administrations?
All right. So, and just to confirm, you're talking about the opposition party, right?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Yeah. So education definitely has come up very strongly as a major issue in this election, and it has been centered on one thing and one thing. Well, not just one thing, but the major thing that it has been centered on has been free secondary education. This has been, if there was just one thing that characterized or that symbolized or that was emblematic and a sort of insignia of the Akufo-Addo administration, it has been free SHS. It's been one of the most debated and most talked about things. When I say free SHS, I mean free senior high school. And so the opposition's position on this has been that it was implemented in a rush, that it hasn't been implemented in the right way, that there are so many problems and challenges that the policy implementation has faced, and that really it has been a bad policy in terms of its implementation. The government, of course, doesn't think the same. But yes, you are right to the extent that this has never been done before in the country, in the history of Ghana, providing literally free senior high school education to anybody of school-going age around that time to the students. It's quite an unprecedented and audacious policy, and it's really has been a major issue that has characterized the past 8 years. And so you would imagine that the opposition will definitely make hay on it. But they've promised that they will maintain the policy. They said they won't cancel it. They've promised that they will maintain the policy. It's just that they will do a review of it. But skeptics have also said that what does the review actually mean? To what extent are they going to review it? And that is the extent to which education has played a major role in this particular election.
So now let's come to your field now. Let's talk media. Let's talk the role of media in these elections, this election. This will be the first time that social media has played a big part when it comes to campaigning by either parties, whether opposition or incumbent. If that was a competition, who would you say actually took the cake home? Would it be the, what's it called again, the incumbent or the opposition party? Would it be Mahamudu or would it be Dr. Bawumia, rather?
Right. If you go on social media and research, we all have to be a bit measured in terms of the correlation between social media and electoral outcomes, or the extent of the role of social media in terms of its social scientific effects in elections. But of course, it does play a major role. I'm not going to sit here and discount it. It does play a major role. A lot of research has been done to the functionality of social media in society in various fields, but particularly, especially during elections. They found to be a great mobilizing force, a great sense of affirmation or in advocacy and other things. So yes, that's important. If you look at the numbers, just a few days ago, you'd realize that John Dramani Mahama has, I do think more, not that I do think, she does have more followers than Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. I think former President John Mahama was hovering around 1.5 million followers, and the incumbent Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, has about 1 million followers. But when you look at the research conducted by other or at least one civil society organization who has done sentimental analysis on Facebook, he puts Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia ahead of John Mahama. Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, who is the incumbent vice president and a former central bank deputy governor, is at, I believe, 51.2 or around 51%, and then Mr. John Mahama was in, I think, 48 or 49. So social media sentiments, right, in terms of what people think about them, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, the incumbent vice president, is ahead. But in terms of the engagement and the followership, I think the stats show Mr. Mahama ahead. So give and take, we'll just have to wait and see how this translates into the election. But make no mistake, many Ghanaians are on Facebook, are on X, they are on Instagram, expressing their views, expressing their feelings and their sentiments about the election. There's a huge social media community that has been involved in this election. And the parties themselves have had a huge presence on social media itself. So definitely social media has come to stay and continues to play a major role in this election.
Has celebrities also endorsed the popular candidates? What about the entertainment scene as well, the entertainment industry? Now, we know Ghana is very booming with its Gollywood, as well as, the music scene and social media influencers. As we're talking about social media, has public figures, whether they're celebrities or movie stars or social media influencers, endorsed the candidate? And do you see that popularity contest, so to speak, play out in this election cycle?
Yeah, it's a very relevant issue to talk about. popular culture has come to stay or has been mainstreamed in politics. So, gone are the days when politics was just seen as a really a serious business, and you don't really see the intersection. But over time, as democracy becomes entrenched, as people begin to understand it, as it begins to expand and infiltrate into the society and it's accepted, there are different innovations and initiatives that people come at this game with. And yes, the popular culture environment, the entertainment, the music and film have featured in a major way. And I'm happy you touched on this because, one of the major things that you began to see in elections here is how deeply involved. I mean, it's happened over the previous election cycles, but it's even more entrenched now. I mean, many musicians have now come out boldly. In the past, they wouldn't really come out to show their face. But one of the major features of this election is how people in the entertainment business or in the popular culture industry have come out, to make their stand, so to speak, in this election. So in the very, very last rally, the very big, final, important rally by both political parties, you found out that there were major musicians who appeared on stage, in both camps. Yeah, who previously really didn't. And they came there, they sang their songs, they did their performances. And even before that, they were very popular, hip life, and gospel musicians. For instance, in the last MPP event, Tego Sisters, who are pretty much a symbol of gospel music in Ghana because they date all the way back to the 1990s, came and performed. And same for a similar thing can be said for the NDC. And throughout the election, many dancers, musicians, artists, film stars have featured to galvanize people. In fact, one of the contesting MPs for Ayawaso West Wogon in Accra, which is the University of Ghana enclave, is John Dumelo, who you may know, a very popular film star in Ghana, and he's contesting. And whilst this has happened in the past or has happened in other democracies, I think it's picked up really, really strongly this time around. And it just showed that politics and popular culture can, after all, be bedfellows. But the good thing about it is that it gets the everyday person involved, people who would ordinarily not pay attention to politics because their favorite musician is performing. They pay attention. The lyrics of the songs are used as advocacy instruments to advocate for certain social things. And so I think it's a very interesting dynamic that we are beginning to see.
Interesting times indeed.
While all this is happening, with the effect of social media, the musicians, the famous stars and all of that, how is the electorate managing misinformation or disinformation, especially when it comes to the very analytical voters, the middle-class people? How are these pieces of information that are coming out about the different candidates affecting their preference, let's put it so, and what class of people? Let's take a look at that when it comes to the class of people. Those in rural areas, those in urban areas, those educated, those not educated. How might these informations interact with their decision?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, it's the misinformation age, it's the fake news age. So we can't really do away with it. Unfortunately, it's become part of the political system over here. Much has been said about it. There's been a lot of efforts to educate people on being politically literate as well as media literate, and to reduce the scourge of misinformation. But hey, it's here. It's been part of it, and it's been done willy-nilly by both parties, both major parties and other even smaller parties. There's hardly a week that passes by that you don't see information that's come back to be labeled fake. And in fact, there was actually one arrest by of a presenter who had actually gone on radio to say that there are different days for voting for the different political parties, and so if you belong to this party, come on this day. If you just to cause apathy and disaffection. And like you said, this may have different influences based on the demographic groups. So such an information may have a heavier effect in the rural areas, in the less literate areas, who depend heavily on the local radio stations for information. And they literally take everything they hear on these stations as the truth. And so that's could really cause a whole lot of confusion or fear and panic in the environment. When you come to the urban areas, people who are more literate, I mean, it's more sophisticated. People use Photoshop, they use other deepfake, they use other materials and to perpetuate deepfake. They use AI-generated content to really pass on information that if you're not really careful, you may think it's the truth. But many civil society organizations have done a yeoman's job in making sure that they track this. There are a lot of organizations who have been tracking it, who every month come out to issue disclaimers and talk about, I think they even rank the information, they fact check the politicians, both on Facebook, on radio, TV, everywhere. They release reports, and all these are propagated on Facebook and social media as well, so people get to know what's fake and what's real. But you never know what might fall through the cracks. And it's important to pay attention to it even on this day of voting, because any misinformation, any disinformation, any sort of fake news that's passed around could end up causing panic, fear, and undermine the system. So hopefully as we move forward, there will be more political education and media education on some of these things. But it has happened. I think I'm even doing some research with some of my colleagues on the extent of Facebook, the extent of misinformation and disinformation that was present in this election. I'm not done with it though, but there's been a lot of it all around religion, around gender, around ethnicity. I mean, that there's violence here and all of that. It's touched on very, very different things that are just not true. So yeah, that's what we have to live with, and hopefully more effort will be done to make sure it's reduced.
Okay. All right. Bernard Akede, who is in Kumasi, joins us live now for more updates as the election exercise continues. Bernard, if you can hear me, well done, and what's the latest with you?
I'm in an area called Patasi, if I'm not mistaken. The election is going on smoothly here, just like the area we left, the region we left earlier. There are about, if I'm not mistaken, about 4 polling units in this area. It's been hit-free, so to speak, like I mentioned earlier. There's a gentleman here who's with me. I'll get to have him join us. Mr. Solomon. And how early did you arrive here? How early did you put some materials there?
It started around, it arrived around 6.
So far, what has the experience been like here?
Yes, I did.
So, has it been different from what you noticed today and last 4 years?
Last 4 years, the police station, it's only 2.
Oh, I can hear.
It's only 2, but this time it's 4. It's divided into 4.
We're going to come back to Bernard Akede. We seem to have a bit of technical issue there with the audio, so we're going to try and make sure that is sorted before we bring back to you Bernard Akede, who is currently in Patasi in Ghana right now as we cover the Ghana elections for 2024. Judith, a lot has been said so far, and of course we still have Eche here, Sikanku, who will also be giving us some information about everything that we have been seeing so far from our correspondents. But I have to note that the similarities are bound, but then again, the execution is different. Yes. I was gonna ask Bernard something very unique regarding how he was able to move from, I think, Kumasi to Patasi. It was like that.
Right.
So if you look at the Nigerians, well, other African situations, you'd find out that might not be as easy as it would seem from what we have.
All this shade that you are throwing to your home country, this your shade that you are shading. Well, it is an election, so there's most likely there's no vehicular movement and human movement, so it's going to be very easy for them to move around. We know that for sure with each election. So it's just smooth sailing for them because there's really no cars on the road. Stop throwing shades in my country.
Let's go right now to Bernard. I hope Bernard is there and he's ready for us already. Bernard, if you are there, we're still connecting with you, are we? Well, if Bernard can hear us, I'm going to go ahead and ask about what it's like moving about during the elections in Ghana. That was what I and Judith were just speaking about right now. So what's it been like? What was it like moving from your past location to where you are at? Judith seems to think I'm throwing shades at other African countries, but no, I'm not. I'm genuinely very curious regarding the logistics of things.
Okay. Before I answer you, Mazino, let me quickly speak to the gentleman who's here, and then I'll come back to your question about movement. Good morning, sir.
We were able to arrange the place and then see to it that everything was smooth.
Okay, fantastic. And so far, has there been any issues here?
Oh, not at all. Everything is moving on smoothly, and there hasn't been any problem at all whatsoever.
All right. Did you vote? Last election.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I want to ask you, what differences would you say you noticed from the last election and what's going on today?
Though it appears the same, except that this time around, when somebody comes, they mention the person's name for the party agents to also identify the person. So as soon as the person comes to vote, you look at whether 8 right, 8 left, and the party agents, all of them are having their registers. So they easily identify the person's face and other things, and then it goes on smoothly.
All right. Now, what are your expectations from this election?
Well, I'm expecting that everything will be peaceful. Mm-hmm. As you can see, the place is serene, and voters are going about voting smoothly, and I expect that at the end of the day, there will be peace.
Okay. Now, besides peace and expectations from today's exercise, what are your expectations generally for Ghana? Now, we've heard different people talk about certain issues in the country that they want to change. What are some of the issues that you're looking forward to that will be changed after the winner comes in?
Yeah, once the winner comes in, we expect that we'll be able to fight the issue of Galamsey. Whoever emerges as a winner will be able to speed up the development of the country by helping to sustain the free SHS, infrastructure development, and then the digitization as well, and then the country can move as fast as possible to international standards.
Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Just one more person, Mazino, and then I'll be with you. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, morning.
Tell us your name.
I'm Mr. Sami Boatin.
Okay. And could you tell us, how it's been for you so far today?
It's very smoothly. At first, we had only 2 police stations. Right now, it's divided into 4. So it makes the voting pattern very, very smoothly. So far, it started around 7 o'clock, 1 hour now. It's going on well. It's going on well.
All right. Compared to how it was last, 4 years ago, what differences can you say you noticed?
The last 4 years, the police stations here was just 2. So it was making things very difficult. You queue for a very long time before you get there. But right now it's 4. So if it's 1,000 divided into 4, it makes the pattern very smoothly, very smoothly.
And your expectations concerning the election at the end of the day?
My expectation is what? Free and fair elections. The winner emerges, Ghana goes on.
Okay. And finally, what are you expecting from the winner? What improvements, specific improvements in the country, are you expecting the winner to address?
Yeah, employment, the youth, the employment, where the world is going in a very digital way, because people need jobs. People need jobs to survive. So when it gets there, then maybe the ideas she brought in and people accepted it. Fine. Ghana goes on and move on. Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Okay. So, Mazino, you have that those responses from those gentlemen who have spoken. It's pretty much the same. It's been peaceful in the few polling stations we visited. We're going to other places. And they say, well, there has been significant improvement from the last 4 years up until now. So I think it's a plus for Ghana and for the Electoral Commission.
Okay. Now, regarding my request from before regarding logistics, I really would like to know. Let's get to that. How did you move from where you were to where you are now in such a short period?
All right, well, we have a vehicle. We have an amazing chauffeur who's been moving us around. I must tell you, Ghana is not a very cheap country, so yeah, it's not exactly drilling holes in our pockets, but it's okay. But we have a good chauffeur who's been moving us around, that's one. 2, it's quite interesting to note that there is no movement in restrictions, unlike the way we have it in Nigeria. It's not a work-free day. There are no curfews. People are going about their regular businesses. Stores are open, shops are open. And I think maybe that's why, like my camera operator did suggest, maybe that's why the election is quite swift. People want to come out, cast their votes, and head back to their businesses, or to their jobs, as the case may be, or whatever it is that they're doing, as regards, locking up everywhere, and then people will drag their feet whenever it is that they want to come, knowing that, well, this movement restriction anyway, so they have all day to themselves. Here, it's business as usual. People still have their stores open, and their businesses are running. I won't be surprised if at some point we run into maybe a little traffic, just something light, because there is movement. However, the movement that is ongoing has not hampered, the peace and the stability of the elections. So lessons to learn, if you ask me.
If you ask me too, lessons to learn. But it's like I said from before, Judith, isn't it shocking? He just noted that it is not a restricted, there's no restriction on vehicles or vehicular movement or even movement generally. So that's quite interesting. But what are the implications on security, however, especially with these sensitive materials that might need to be transported?
So in Kumasi here, security has been fantastic to answer your question. First of all, I noticed that there's not been heavy, unlike what Afia said in Accra, and you could understand that Accra is a capital city, more of a metropolitan city, so you'd have more eyes there. In Kumasi here, security has been really, really, really light, so to speak. We didn't notice any show of force like you'd see in Lagos or in other states just a day before the election. There's not been any unnecessary parade of police or soldiers or security operatives here in Kumasi, as far as we can tell. But in each polling unit, you may have seen a uniformed police officer walk past the camera maybe. We've noticed that there are certain uniformed police officers here and there. But interestingly, I haven't seen any armed one, unlike what we get to see again back in certain polling units in Nigeria. And there's been peace. So far, from what I can tell in different polling units we've visited, this is like the third, I want to believe, that we've visited, and it's been relatively peaceful. We're going to more places to see if things will change. But again, these are lessons to learn. And I've come to see that even the people themselves are interested and invested in the peaceful running of this election and in the smooth running of the process. So it's one thing for the people to be invested in it, and then it's another thing for the country itself to ensure that things work as seamlessly as possible.
Interesting times that we see, and I mean, it's a very pivotal and very interesting election as well. An incumbent running and an opposition trying to get back into the power. The question is, who will win at the end of the day? We wait to see you go on to another polling unit and see what happens there. But Bernard, Benny, thanks for doing this with us. It was always very insightful discussion. Bernard Akeda there, live at Patasi there in Kumasi. We switch gears back to our guest, Iche Nsikanku. He is associate professor, there we go, at the University UNIMEC Ghana, and then we'll continue our conversation. Iche, many thanks for still sticking around with us. You've heard, I'm sure you've pretty much had our conversations with our correspondent there from Patasi. And very interesting, you talked about, not really much concerns for violence, very high tension situation. Everyone's going about their daily duties, daily lives. Business is still as usual, and people are still coming out to vote. Let's talk about that, right? But also the rhetoric of, the do or die affair with, the boat incumbent. Sorry, the boat. It's looking like a two-man horse race. They've been there. They're still there. They know what it takes. They see what it is. With the people still going about their duties, with the do or die affair, very pivotal moment in this election. What do you think Ghanaians want to see come out at the end of today?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, your reporter did a good job there. And I'll say one or two things. This is Africa, and we are building governance and democracy on the continent. Nigeria had the elections, Botswana had theirs, Kenya had theirs. This is Ghana. There's a story of democratic enhancement and entrenchment which is being written across the continent and which is not characterized by the frames or themes of doom and gloom and conflict. I think that the narrative coming out of Africa, reported by Africans, captures the reality on the ground, as opposed to the snippets and the little limited frames and labels or frameworks that other kind of Western media, some Western media, would want to place an African election. And so when you read that kind of reportage, it gives you a very limited appreciation of governance on the continent. Of course, not everything is perfect, but these are stories and that have been written across the continent, and today it's Ghana. Yes, there have always been concerns about a peaceful and smooth electoral process, and your reporter got that right. There's been a lot of investment in that, so much so that some people have even mocked it and called it the peace industry, because there's a whole lot of activity and programs and policies that have been drafted and drawn around the very idea that elections should be smooth and peaceful here. And maybe it speaks to the concern that of the propensity or the probability that there could be chaos. But even in advanced democracy like the United States, we've all seen the huge questions about electoral integrity in the US, issues about acceptability of results, the safety, violence being perpetrated, or concerns about safety during elections. So not completely new, but there has been investment in it out here in Ghana. We have a National Peace Council, and now that we are looking at this from a global perspective, or to put it into context, we have a National Peace Council, which is a nationally recognized governmental institutionalized body, but operates independently, kind of like the National Media Council, right? Or the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice. We have a National Peace Council as well, which is responsible for promoting, advocating, educating people, and instigating or instilling a culture of peace and civility in the country during elections, or even during the 4-year period. And in the run-up to the election, I'm probably sure you followed it, there is what we call the National Peace Pact, which is one of the major events that happens before the elections. All political parties and presidential candidates meet at a national event covered by national television in front of the cameras and everybody, and they sign a peace pact that they would not perpetuate violence or encourage their supporters to do that, and they are bound by it. It's like a pledge which they are bound by, and that is one of the things that has ensured that this happens. But even the Ghanaians themselves, they've been advocacy, there've been songs, there've been different programs that have educated people on the need to be civil and civic in their attitude towards presidential and parliamentary elections, and that's probably why we see this happen. But despite that, it's a human institution. We've all heard of some of the violence or pockets of violence that have happened in previous elections, and we're just praying and hoping that we can only progress and see less and less of this as time goes on.
I must also talk about, how significant is the role of, the urban middle class. They're being described as the analytical voters. In our last conversation, we talked about, just how, the voters, not majority of all of the voters, the demography is more, tech savvy or digitalized to understand certain things, and so they can fall for deep fakes and misinformation and disinformation. But the middle class is a completely different conversation entirely. How do you see them playing? What role would they play in determining the outcome of this election?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, elections are very complicated, and as you've seen all across the world, the right-wing wave, then it turned into some left-wing wings, and then the center-right has come again. You look at elections in Italy, in Southern America, in France, we saw what happened there. In the United States, the return of the center-right is back, or even the extreme right, and all of that. We've seen the election of the first female president in Namibia, I believe, and different things are happening. And so it's important to realize that voters are not monolithic groups. And when it comes to election, there's a lot of cognitive elements and psychological elements that happen or that take place, and so you might not be able to put your hand on the rubric or on the button all of the time. But we can do some analysis, hazard some guesses, and do some analysis. What I think is, yes, we are beginning to have a very more enlightened, a very discerning population out here in Ghana. I can tell you that for sure. One of the major things that you've begun to see is that, yes, we do have strongholds and then battleground states. So we have people who come into the voting either through political party affiliation, they are members of the political party, they are registered, they are affiliated, they identify with the party. So these are people who would vote for their party no matter what. And that translates into the strongholds or the safe seats, right? So Ashanti region is the stronghold of the New Patriotic Party, which is the incumbent party led by the sitting Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. And we have the Volta region, which is the stronghold of the opposition party, the National Democratic Congress, led by His Excellency former President John Dramani Mahama, the party of Jerry Rawlings' party of Jonathan Mills in the past. Their stronghold is in the Volta region down south in Ghana, Ashanti stronghold. But we have the swing states. We have the swing regions. I think I've been doing too much U.S. analysis. The swing regions. The swing regions as well, the Western North, we have Western, we have Central region, we have, I'll take Bono, one of the Bono regions as well, and then of course, Greater Accra, the swingest of the swingest states, the capital, is also a swing region. It doesn't belong to any political party. And so this is where really the battle is going to be fought. But to the point, or to your question, there are even people who belong to these safe regions or strongholds who are beginning to even depart, or who don't mind departing from their political parties. And that is what brought about the concept of skirt and blouse, alone in local parlance, where you vote for a different presidential candidate for the presidency, and then when it comes to parliament, the person that you vote for does not necessarily belong to the same party as the candidate you voted for in the presidential election. So you can vote MPP in the presidency and vote NDC in the parliamentary, vote NDC in the presidency and vote MPP in the parliamentary based on the parliamentary candidates that is in your constituency. So I think there's a lot of discernment that is going on. And among the young people as well, there are many young people who are also beginning to depart from their home or their parents' party. So you find in a home, they tell you, hey, this is NPP home or this is NDC home. We believe in Dankwa, Buzia. Other persons say we believe in Rawlings, in Nkrumah, and all of that. That's the older generation that there. But if you speak to a lot of young people, not all of them, but there's beginning to be that culture of independence these days. So you can see a young person who can say, hey, yes, I come from this region. I've lived here. I've always voted for this party. But this time around, I am not going to vote for that party. I did some interviews on the ground. We've been speaking to some people qualitatively, and some people tell you that for the first time, I'm going to vote for party A or party B, or for the first time, I'm going to switch and all of that. There are people who are also voting based on issues. There are people who are voting based on issues. Your reporter mentioned illegal mining. I think I'll do a big disservice if I don't introduce that into the conversation. It's a very big issue in Ghana because people are mining for gold illegally and destroying the land, destroying the environment to the extent that water bodies have been polluted, to the extent that it is causing a degradation of the soil environment and perpetuating, taking away agricultural lands. And these are people who have depended on agriculture for their entire lives and their entire generations. And these lands are being destroyed, being dug up for gold, and they are not being replaced or replicated or reinstated. And so for people like this, they look at that and say, and the thing is that this is taking place in particular constituencies, which could be a stronghold for a party. But somebody can look at that and say, hey, this is how this has affected me. And so because of that, I am not going to vote for this incumbent party or this party, which is my traditional party, because this is how it has affected me. On the other hand, when it comes to something like free SHS or free secondary education, There are people who are not necessarily partisans or affiliated to the MPP or any party, but they can also tell you that, you know what, I never got to go to secondary education because of the fees. I know somebody who was sacked from school because he couldn't pay his fees in secondary education. Nobody from my village has ever attended a secondary school in a prestigious region or anywhere before. I've talked to people who said their aunties died and left children for them and they couldn't go to school. The only reason why they were able to go to school was because of free secondary education. There are people who have come from the villages to the cities, to good schools, and have gone to Cardiff, have gone to London, have gone to New York, have gone to different states to continue education right from their villages, where their mothers are selling firewood or charcoal or something. These are big stories for many people. And for voters like that, they look at it and they say, well, you know what? For me, this is what is important to me. And although I may traditionally belong to this party, on this particular issue, I think this other party has done well, I'm going to vote for them. Okay. So there's a lot of segmentation going on in this election, and we can only wait and see how that plays out finally today.
Well, actually, you took words right out of my mouth. We can see the different lines with which the different parties are actually playing on, the sentiments that they're playing on with their strategy. You mentioned something that I was going to ask about. It's kind of like two issues in this question here. First off, you talked about mining, illegal mining. I assume that you're referring to Galamsey. I think that's what it's called in Ghana. How big an issue is it that it's impacted so many policies or policies that haven't been made? That's one. On the other side is that we've had so many entries from our correspondents and people that they've spoken to about digitalization in Ghana. How big an issue is it, and why is it something that that is also an influencing factor in these elections? So two issues there regarding Galamsey, and then about digitalization, which is a difficult word to say when you're on air. But yes, those two issues.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Galamsey is definitely a big issue. If these elections were held 4 months ago, 5 months ago, 3 months ago, or a year ago from now, I mean, trust me, the government would have suffered big time because of it. And still an issue. So we'll see what the exit polls or some of these say, how many people voted based on illegal mining and Galamsey. I mean, it's huge. Some people might say it happens only in the urban, away from Accra, but like I've explained, even in these communities, and I have to admit that most of it happens in Ashanti region, which is a stronghold of the incumbent party. And they need the numbers there because they are not too popular when it comes to the economy. Actually, they are not popular when it comes to the economy. So they do need the numbers from their home region. And illegal mining is happening. But you see, the thing about it is that it's beyond that. When the water bodies, everybody else suffers from it. When there's agricultural lands are being eroded and taken away, everybody suffers from it.
Actually, real quick, you need to touch on digitalization because we need to round up this session. So if you can really tell us about digitalization now.
Okay, I was just trying to address your question, but let me go to digitalization because I think it's a two-part issue, and I've already talked about Galamsey. No, digitization or digitalization is a big issue. Listen, if we were supposed to use only one word to describe the incumbent presidential, I mean, he has made it such a central theme that you can pretty much reduce his presidential campaign to one theme or one word: digitization. The idea has been that the country needs to move to the next level, that we need to embrace digital systems to get into the fourth industrial revolution, that it's through digitization and technology and innovation that whatever Ghanaians are looking for can be brought to them in terms of making life better for them. When it comes to healthcare, you go to the hospitals and there's no more paperwork. It's the systems are so synchronized through digital systems. When you come to the banking system, there's mobile money interoperability, first time happened in Africa. When it comes to pharmacy, there's e-pharmacy. You can literally sit in your home and through digital systems access drugs or pharmacies. The medical drone delivery, blood is being sent to the hinterland. And Ghana has the biggest medical drone delivery system, or one of the biggest in the world. And so this is one of the major issues I believe people are going to also predicate their voting decisions on.
AJ, well, the only factor here is time, and we wait to see how it will play out at the end of the day. But thank you so much, EJ, for joining us to do this with us. EJ Sikanku, he's an associate professor with UNIMED. Thank you so much for your insights on this very crucial topic when it comes to the economy and how
it's okay if you say producer. In my former life, before I got into academia, I worked as a producer and a journalist and a political reporter.
There we go. I'm clairvoyant like that. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. But thank you so much. I mean, these 2024 elections are indeed a defining moment for Ghanaians, just seeking for economic, stability when it comes to the nation. But once again, we appreciate you for doing this with us. Many thanks.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. We switch gears now as we have Afia Hagen, our correspondent who's live in Accra, the capital, Ghana, joining us now for more update. Afia, well done. What's the latest with you? We will try to make that connection.
Station A. It's in two parts. We have polling station A and B. This is in North Legon in Accra. Quite quiet here at the moment. As I said, polling stations have been open for about 2 hours now. And I have the presiding officer for the polling station, Kekeli, here with me. Kekeli, polling stations have been open for about 2 hours. How are things shaping up? It's quite quiet here.
Yeah, everything is okay. For now, we have had the people in the line and we are able to serve them for now. And the line is, as you can see, is about to go down. So we are expecting more voters. Actually, I was expecting a crowd here, but unfortunately, the number that has come is not that encouraging. But as you said, it's 2 hours down the line, so we are not supposed to panic for now. We are expecting more people to come, since we have about 526 voters on the register. Yeah.
So 526 voters registered at this station. Have you got any idea how many people have been through so far?
So far we have about 100 of them here. We are expecting more of them to come. Sure.
Peaceful so far, right?
So far, we have no problem here. I was told this polling station in particular, there has been a peace around this place over the years, so I don't even expect any conflict or problem at all.
But other polling stations around the city and maybe areas outside Accra, there have been some concerns about tensions, about violence. Do you think that's something we might see in this election?
I can't speak to that, though tensions are high for now, and a lot of people may want to do one or two things that may end up bringing problem. But I presume that there shouldn't be any conflict anywhere. Though we are humans, anything can happen. Yeah, sure.
You also get a chance to vote yourself in this election. What are your expectations? It's done, the station closes at 5. What's your expectations for after this election?
Yeah, so my expectation is there should be a peaceful election here, and then when results are declared, I should have just a peaceful submission of my pin sheet. That's all.
Polling stations close at 5. Can you talk us through a bit of the process of counting, collating the votes and declaring the winner?
Okay, so after the polls close, I will have to first look at the number of ballots issued for the day, and then I'll take record of that one first, and then look at the number of people who are verified, because we use verification machines in verifying the people. Then if they tally, that means everything is on point. Before I open the box and sort the papers out, the ballot papers out, after which the counting begins. Yeah.
526 registered voters here. When do you expect to declare this particular result?
I don't get a question. No?
When do you expect to declare the result for this polling station?
For now, I can't tell, but to say something around 6 to 6:30, we should be able to announce the result here. Yeah.
And in a wider picture, do you have any idea when nationally we might be able to declare a result?
And nationally, I can't tell, but I'm sure if things go down well, by tomorrow morning around 8, there should be a declaration. Yeah. Sure.
All right. Kekeli, thank you so much for your hard work. Yeah, I'll let you get on. Thank you so much. So the presiding officer of this particular polling station, SEM polling station in North Legon, just talking me through the process of getting these 526 voters, that is, if they all turn up into this polling station, getting them voted, getting the votes counted, and getting that result declared. Now, he said this particular polling station may declare the result between 6 and 7 p.m. Ghana time this evening, and perhaps we might have a declaration of the winner tomorrow morning. That's just Kekeli's assertion. We have no idea, but we do know that they do have to declare within 72 hours.
All right. Well, Afia, many thanks for doing this with us. We appreciate you for all of the updates, and we're ready to hear more from you. But so far, well done. Afia Hagen there, one of the polling units live at Accra, the capital, Ghana. We continue with our live updates and more analysis here as Ghanaians cast their votes. And let's just acknowledge one of our guests who's joining us to discuss the economy as the main issue for this election is none other than Joe Jackson. He is an economist, and he joins us. Well, Mr. Jackson, a very good morning to you.
Hey, good morning. Good to be on your station.
Good morning and good to have you. We'll come back to this discussion, but let's go on a short break. You're watching the live coverage of the Ghanaian general elections for 2025, 2024. I beg your pardon. Don't go anywhere. I can't wait for the new year. I promise I can't.
Welcome back. It's still the special live coverage of Ghana's 2024 general elections, and as Ghanaians head to the polls, the stakes are high, and the next 4 years, well, that hangs in a balance. Our focus today is on the theme manifestos and also mandates, Ghana's future in the next 4 years. Both the New Patriotic Party, the NPP, and the National Democratic Congress, NDC, have released ambitious manifestos outlining their plans for diversity, governance, and also the development. But what do these promises mean for the average Ghanaian?
And how will they address challenges such as inter-ethnic tensions, economic disparity, and youth unemployment? So joining us for an in-depth discussion are 2 distinguished guests. Our first guest is Joe Jackson. He's an economist, and we also have us joining us later on the program will be Emmanuel Wilson, which we will get onto, and also we have Fifi Baofo. He is the head of the public affairs at Cocoa Pod. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joe Jackson. Thank you for joining us this morning. Let's begin with you, an economist. So let's talk about Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia's previous engagement as the central bank governor for Ghana. I'd like to know exactly how this will influence, or this has influenced the campaign on so far, or how it might influence policies should they get elected into office. What's your take, Mr. Jackson?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, the Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia has been always touted as the economic guru, the one who understands the economy. He's written books on the economy. He's been a deputy governor at the central bank. So his economic credentials have been touted as far back as 8 years ago when the current ruling government was coming to power. Unfortunately, his economic credentials have been tainted by the experience of Ghanaians in the last few years, especially the last 3 years, where the economy has crashed. The exchange rate has gone from 6 cedis to $1 to now over 17 cedis to $1. The interest rates have gone through the roof. As high as 50% is now dropped to 23%. So his economic credentials have been tainted. And in fact, one of the charges that have been laid against Dr. Bawumia was that in spite of all his purported economic credentials and him being the head of the economic management team, Ghana's economy has suffered greatly. And it's been a repeated charge laid against him by the opposition. So at the moment, most people are on the fence where his economic credentials are concerned. He's claimed that he was the driver's mate and not the driver, and hence he didn't have as much influence as he could have had on the economy. The jury is still out on this issue, and we would know whether Ghanaians truly believe that even though he was head of the Economic Management Committee, he did not have the influence required when we go to the polls.
So if you say he said that he was the passenger in this economy, do you think that if they were to get into office, that he has what it takes to design better policies for Ghana to actually bring them out of the economic doldrums that Ghana finds itself currently? Has he got it?
First of all, he didn't say he was the passenger. He said he was the driver's mate. And the driver's mate here is the driver's assistant, is the, if you like, the one who reads the map and so on and so forth. But at the moment, his critics say he doesn't have it. His advocates say, listen, there were a lot more people who had more influence, like the former Minister of Finance, who had a lot more influence and caused the crash in the economic, in Ghana's economy. And also, he has pivoted from being an economic guru to now being the champion of digitalization, the evangelist for the digitalization of Ghana's economy. And that is how he's positioned himself now. Because truly, to position, it's a difficult one to position yourself as an economic guru when the Ghanaians are suffering greatly in the economy as it is now. We've suffered, 68% of purchasing power has been wiped out in 2.5 years. That's a tough one to take to an election if you're the incumbent vice president.
And very interesting times indeed. Let's set the tone, shall we, and discuss the economy in entirety. I always find it very indicting when vice presidents run for office, right immediately after their tenure. And I find it very interesting that they do. I find it very indicting on the number one citizen or the president. If they do not, after 8 years, you feel like you need to go and run for presidency to fix whatever mistake your first in command did wrong. I find it very indicting on the sitting president. But away from that, let's set the tone really for this conversation in terms of, let's now look at the manifestos and the mandates of the two NPP and NDP, right? Bawumia and Mahama. Let's look at them and look at them in entirety with the backdrop of the economy. Which has a stronger manifesto that you think can help steer Ghana to prosperity?
It's interesting. If you're looking for the manifesto that advocates for the most radical changes to the economy, then it's the MPP headed by the former Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. He's advocating for a flat tax. He's advocating for a return to the gold standard. He's making gold and the currency stability a central part of his policy and the manifesto. If you switch around to the NDC, who are in opposition, they are the ones who are actually not offering that dramatic change in economic policy. What they are doing is we will run more efficiently, we will reduce corruption, and we will take out the nuisance taxes, as they call it.
And what about, you talked about Bawumia, what about Mahama as well? What about his manifesto? Do you see, is it also drastic? I think one of them is calling for austerity measures. Is it Mahama that's calling for austerity measures when it comes to fiscal spending and, and discipline? And what do you make of that move?
Mahama's manifesto is where the economy is concerned is not that dramatic. is calling for austerity for the first 6 months. He calls it that we should give the government a honeymoon and allow them to find out what is happening. There is an Akan proverb that says that you won't be able to tell the height of the animal except when it is dead. So his attitude has been, give us a 6-month honeymoon to look at the animal, to find out how deep the whole economic hole is, how bad the structures are, so that we can together find out a solution to go forward. He's also advocated for a number of taxes to be reduced. The tax burden is particularly high. I have a challenge with both sides, with both the NDC and the NPP, because all of them are offering a number of freebies. We'll take off this tax, we'll take off that tax. But the challenge is that the public purse is empty as now. And if you take off the taxes, what's going to happen? How are you going to find the revenue to make the shortfall? In addition, we are in an IMF program now. And I don't know whether we can even take off those after we have signed the IMF program, and we are not out of the IMF program yet.
So I was going to ask you regarding these austerity measures that are being suggested by the opposition, what form they would take. You touched on a few of them, but what tangible form exactly would they take? They would be in form of policies, I'm assuming. How would it affect the people? When the opposition is talking about these austerity measures, have they also taken a sample, do you think, when it comes to other African nations that have gone that direction? And are they ready for what it might do to the economy further? We've got instances from here in West Africa where countries have increased tax, increased prices for petrol, crude oil, and all the rest, and it didn't fare well for them. It's been rather bad for these countries. There's also the case of Kenya. So are there samples that the opposition is looking at and saying this could work for Ghana if we were to implement a 6-month austerity measure type of instance?
The most immediate effect of that austerity would be a freeze of government salaries and public sector salaries. Listen, the public sector workers all think and expect that come 7th of January, there'll be a magic wand waved and their loss purchasing power, loss of standard of living would be restored by a new government. That won't happen. And when the opposition asks for an austerity, what they're saying is salaries are costing us up to 50% of all our revenue. We need to put a freeze on that whilst we find out, because you can't run a deficit as high as we used to, because you can't borrow from the international markets anymore. And there's no sense in running a deficit only to pay salaries and to pay interest on debt. And that's why we are in an IMF program now. And the biggest issue is to tell Ghanaians that expect a freeze on salaries. That will be really the thrust of the austerity, whilst they find other ways to fix the economy that is in the doldrums at the moment.
Very interesting times that we see. I mean, Mr. Jackson, it's been wonderful having you join us here, just taking a look at the economy and also the candidates, their manifestos. But we wait to see, hopefully, they're able to take advice and you look at other samples from other West African nations, and whoever goes into power, sticks to the plan and make sure that they steer Ghanaians to prosperity. But Mr. Joe Jackson has been wonderful joining us today on the program. Mr. Joe Jackson is an economist giving us more insight on economy of the nation's economy as it pertains to Ghana's elections. I'll switch gears away from Mr. Jackson now, as we're joined by our correspondent Afia Hagen. She is in the capital, Accra, and she joins us live with more updates. We unfortunately do not have her at this time. We're going on a short break. When we come back on the other side, we have analysis for you to look at the past elections, the numbers, and what we expect to see when it comes to turnout, voter turnout, and for the elections, and what that number would play when it comes to tallying the results. We're going to have Uyechi join us. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere.
No, it's not. So, but are you serious? I'm interested. Yes. Yes. Yes, he's doing it. One step to my right. Eric Pan. Sorry? You mean the same message? That kind of message. Let's say you never know. They not tell you. But you know that I'm supposed to be standing here, not here, because I don't know how my. Tell them to punch one graphic first, and let's see whether it's facing here or it's opposite. Okay, something like that.
Ghana decides 2024. This is the ballot as we will give you the special live coverage of the elections in Ghana happening today. And once again, we can't do that without some analytics now, can we? And of course, the producers have thought out a way to make sure that I get in trouble today by inviting Onye Chiobaro to be the one to do the analytics. Onye, you're welcome. No compliments for you. Get on with it.
Now,
Thank you so much, Maxino. Thank you, Judith. Great to have you both at this time. But the numbers are speaking a lot, but can we align the numbers with what's playing out today in Ghana? Of course, let's go to the screen. We'll start off with Ghana being very notable for having peaceful and democratic transition of government. Of course, this that is characterized by seamless transition since the Fourth Republic, 1992. Now, this track record for Ghana has put them as a beacon of democracy on the African continent. But the big question here is, do the numbers align with this assertion? Let's get to the screen right now. Of course, Ghana, since its transition to democracy in 1992, they have held 8 elections. And within this 8 cycle of elections, we've got 2 parties dominating 4, having to win 4 each of these 8 elections. 2 dominant parties, the MPP and the NDC, the New Patriotic Party, which controls the center-left, while we've got the New Democratic Congress controlling the center-right of Ghana. Now, in the past 8 cycles, you can see on my screen right now, we've got by percentage how these parties have fared in elections. Of course, coming from 1992, here you see by 58.3%, we had NDC having to take the reins. In 1992, of course, leaving MPP to just go by 30.4% of the vote. Now, 96, they also won by 57.4%, with MPP having 39.6% over here. But after 1996, we saw NDC, they could not go above 51% in the total vote count for each election. Here you can see dropping by 43.1%, 44.6% in 2004. 50.2%. They could not go above 51. They have dropped below 51% since the 1996 election. You can see the trajectory over here. Even the runoff election for 2020, they dropped by 47.2%. On the other hand, we have NPP. For NPP, they gained a boost in the year 2000 election, and they garnered 56.9% of the national vote count. But after then, they've tried their very best possible to go above 51% of the vote. There you can see in 2020, where we had the runoff election, they finished with 51.2% of the total vote count. Not forgetting 2016 here, when they went by 53.9% of the total vote count. Today, there are other determinants that would really tell us where how the shape of the 2024 election would look like. But we have to link it to the other previous elections that have been done in Ghana. Let's see by registered voters, by the total vote cast, and the turnout by percentage. And this is what you have here. Of course, encouraging numbers, you can see it's a growth in the bars. It is indeed a growth in the bars. Now, the smallest turnout by percentage was in 1992, when the turnout percentage was at 50.2%. After 50.2%, if you go along with me, you can see there is a rise. 58 in 1996, 61 in 2000, 85, which was the highest percentage of turnout in a particular election. And these 85% saw just over 2 million not coming out to exercise their franchise on the day, with over 10 million registered voters, with over 8 million vote cast, just 2 million. So an encouraging number there that will give the rise to that 85.6%. The third percentage that is highest is in 2012, where we have 79.4% of the vote, of the turnout. Now here, large number, an increase in number for registered voters, and an increase in number for the total vote cast on the day. The next figure, the top three over there, the next figure, we have 78.9%. That's in 2020, where we had the runoff election for the day. Over 17 million, of course, registered. And we saw over 13 million coming out to exercise their franchise. That gave rise to that 78.9% turnout. With this, our analysis says Ghana is always on a rise at every single cycle of election. From 1992, there was a rise, to 96, to 2000, to 2004, 2008, 2012, 16, 2020, which was the last election Ghana had before this very present election that we are witnessing right now. Of course, a growth there, no decline, but an uprise movement for the registered voters, the vote cast, and the turnout percentage. We are hoping to see a higher figure today, greater than what was experienced in the previous elections in Ghana. All right, there's some determinants. All the determinants could be strongholds in Ghana. Now, Ghana has got 16 administrative regions, and these 16 administrative regions will have these particular determinants where the Western, the Central, and Greater Accra, they are swing regions that can be pivotal to determinant of who wins this election for the year. Now, out of those 16 administrative regions, we have MPP controlling only 5 of those regions, including the Ashanti region that can amass about 17.74% of the vote, which is the second highest to what can be gotten from Greater Accra. Yes, from Greater Accra, though might look a little bit small here in the map, but what they say, small but mighty. Let's align it with what's happening in Nigeria. In the Nigerian map, you know for sure that Lagos is sitting somewhere so small, but Lagos has got the highest population when it comes to those who are residential in Lagos, those who live in Lagos. We can then align that with Greater Accra. That's how it looks like. So for MPP, they control 5 of those regions, including Ashanti region. Now represented in the gray marker here is where the MPP, the regions the MPP have hold of. The Ashanti, Ahafo, Bono. We've got Eastern, not forgetting the Northeast. The MPP controls those regions there, while the NDC controls 8 of the regions from the total 16 regions in the country. And here, by the layman marker, is the NDC, Bono East, Savannah, Upper West, Upper East, Northern. Now, this northern region can get them 7.74% of the vote. You can see that by landmass, it is the biggest in the map size. So you can get them only, but that cannot be enough for them today. They need either the vote from the Western, the Central, or even Greater Accra. Can they get this done? These are the pivotal areas in determining the election for the strongholds for this particular election. Let's move ahead right now. We go to our projections for today's election. Now, these are permutations, of course. Having looked at how and what the numbers of the regions MPP controls and the number of the regions NDC controls, we have projected a particular percentage that may or may not play out for the 2024 election. But this also goes with my earlier assertions that says that Greater Accra and Ashanti have a higher percentage of what they can bring to the fore. Now, the share, we went by share of national vote, the region share of national vote, 2024 projection for MPP, since Ghana has been a duopoly, 2 horse race a long time ago. And we have another 2024 projection for NDC. Now, by percentage, you can see the share of national vote. We have 19.86% for Greater Accra, and we've got 17.50% for Ashanti region. Now, these are all our permutations. But looking at our second slide, where we've got the list percentage share by national vote, will be Savannah. Savannah's just got 1.80%, and we are projecting 32.45% for MPP and 67.25% for NDC. Moving ahead, today is the day. We know that it's been a 2-horse race a very long time in Ghana, either MPP or NDC having the day, having to rule in the Jubilee House. But can something different play out today? Ghana historically has not had a strong thought force before. The last time a particular thought force, raised their head was in 1992, and that was when the People's Convention Party did have that little rise, not even amassing to above 300,000 votes. They could only get 266,710 votes, not even up to 300. But represented in red here is the MPP. You can see the upward rise down to millions of total vote counts. Represented in blue here is the National Democratic Congress, second party in the running, represented in blue. And you can see that upward rise from here up to almost 6 million there. So interesting numbers. Can a thought force come out for this 2024 election? Can what happened in the Nigerian general elections, where Labour Party, they all rise like an eagle, as they will call it. So we're hoping to see that. So we've got New Revolution Party. Maybe they can also, the New Action Party movement also, maybe they can do this for the 2024 election. Let's see the numbers. I have a 23-day period where the Electoral Commission of Ghana did a test trial, having to tell people to come register to vote. Let's see that slide before this, please. Of course, that slide has got that 23-day period where the Electoral Commission of Ghana undertook a limited voter registration exercise from May 7 to May 29, 2024. And they were able to amass 778,447 registered voters, with the ladies taking the day. Now, bringing it to today, the data we've got for today's election, yes, to see the number of voter registration, female number, and the male numbers, we're hoping that this can cause a rise in the percentage of turnout for today's election. At the end of the day, we would have a new sheriff in town at the Jubilee House. That was what we've got for you today in the data room. Back to you, Judith and Maxino.
Because you seem right at home there, you're enjoying this.
I think I should.
The numbers never lie, and we love the data, don't we? Numbers don't lie, and very, 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 very in-depth analysis from you there. Thank you so much, Onye. Onye Obaru is our analyst there for today, just giving us a bit of stats and what to expect. Data analyst and sport anchor, giving us a bit of insight on the numbers there, and hopefully what would the turnout would be looking like at the end of the day, just tallying it from what we've seen from past general election cycle.
Yeah, I saw something happen in 2012 that made the MPP popular all of a sudden again. So I'm wondering what exactly it was, whether it was something that had to do with the manifesto from before the elections or after. But it seemed that the popularity went...
Let me tell you what it is. It was dissatisfaction. They were dissatisfied.
Yes, people's grievances.
The people were dissatisfied and they voted them out. Same happened with PDP and APC.
Yeah.
Well, only time will tell whether they're dissatisfied with this guys now. But again, once again, many thanks for doing this. We'd also appreciate you for doing this.
My pleasure.
We move on now as we understand that Emmanuel Wilson joins us now for more in-depth analysis when it comes to discussing about the manifestos and just the people, the manifestos for each candidate and what their mandates are and what the future in the next 4 years will be. Wilson Emmanuel is the chief crusader of Crusaders Against Corruption Ghana, and he'll be talking to us specifically regarding corruption and the fight against corruption in Ghana. Well, Emmanuel, many thanks for joining us. We appreciate you for doing this with us this morning.
It's a pleasure.
All right, let's get started, shall we? Very interesting manifesto from both leading candidates, both popular candidates, I'll leave it at that. We've seen both parties have emphasized, inclusivity, regional representation in governance. Talk to us, what do you make of their manifestos? Let's start there.
Well, clearly speaking, as you indicated earlier, our interest has to do with good governance and then fight against corruption. And so if you look at the two manifestos that have come, and this is not the first time, we look at it right from 2016, 2012 to date, you realize that these particular manifestos of the two political parties, they seem to have some interesting proposals when it comes to the fight against corruption. And rightly so, they really spend some time on it, and rightly so, because this election, that is today's election, will be determined largely by two things, or three things. The first one has to do with the economy. The third one has to be, and the economy, I'm making particular reference to the dollar-CD relationship. The second one has to do with unemployment. The youth unemployment seems to be increasing by the day and by the year. And the third one has to do with matters of corruption. We've gotten to a state where majority or the average Ghanaian seems to be enlightened and believes that fighting corruption is very key because they see the effect of it around them. And they also see the effect of it even in their lives. And so I wasn't surprised that both parties decided to spend some extra time on discussing in their manifesto how they are going to fight corruption. There has been this argument as to whether or not just writing it in the manifesto will reflect the reality. And that is where people move further to look at, okay, these are the things you have proposed in your manifesto, but going beyond your manifesto, what do we need to be convinced of? So they bring in the personality and they bring in the track record. And bringing in the personality, they look at whether or not the leader or the one who owns the manifesto has some exhibition, some traits that suggest that he is committed to fighting corruption. So that is the second level of the argument that Ghanaians seems to be engaging in. The other thing they also look at is whether or not, aside the personality, whether or not they have been able to prove practically that they, when given the opportunity, they would do it. In the sense that the leading political parties or the leading candidates, the NDC, John Mahama, the MPP, Bawumia, both of them have had the opportunity of leading this country. Bawumia is still the vice president. He's the head of the economic management team. John Mahama has been a vice president before. He has been the head of economic management team. He has even had the opportunity of becoming a president before. So in terms of track record, both individuals, there should be some track record for them to compare themselves with. So people look at all these things and they decide whether or not they are going to vote. There's one thing that seems to be a negative on the NPP, Bawumia, and their manifesto in line with fighting corruption. People have also had the argument that right from 2016, 2020 to date, when the NPP presented a manifesto that brought them into the Jubilee House or the Flagstaff House or the presidential house in 2016 and 2020, their manifestos contained about 17 clear policies, anti-corruption policies, which they promised Ghanaians that when they come to office, they are going to implement those policies. As we speak, it looks like they have not been able to do even a quarter of it. Indeed, the last check suggests that out of the 17, they were just able to implement about 4 or 5 of those policies. And so in terms of track record, people make the argument that, well, the MPP that was led by Bawumia and the current president, Akufo-Addo, they were those who promised these policies. 8 years on, or almost 8 years on, they've just been able to do about 4 or 5. So why should we be convinced that given the chance, what you have in your manifesto, you are going to commit yourself to it. Those
Mr.
are
Wilson,
the difficulties and the challenges.
I hate to
that
cut you, but we need to put a. I hate to cut you, but we need to put a pin on it for now because we're being informed that our correspondent Bernard is about to connect with us. That's a live cross with him to speak to one of the former member of parliament at the constituency he is at the moment. Bernard, if you can hear me, what's the latest?
It was very smooth. So looking at the way things are going, I think everything is in order. So far as I'm concerned, so far so good. This is not the first place that hasn't been. I started around 5:30 in the morning, and I've crisscrossed the whole Kumasi metropolis and some of the municipalities within the Kumasi city. And so far, what I'm seeing is the best. This is where I come from. This is my hometown. So my vote is always here. Even if you send me to America to be a mayor in America, or you send me to any part of Ghana to be an officer, I'll come back here and vote during the election day.
What can you say are the improvements so far between last 4 years election and this one that you've noticed so far?
Well, what I can see is that I can see we have a lot of polling booths here. In the last or previous elections, we are not having a lot of polling booths like this. And also, I think they have also created more polling stations. So the line and the queue, you can't see it as it was some time ago. So, as I said, it is so far so good for us.
And what are your expectations, I beg your pardon, for Ghana and Ghanaians after this election generally? There is improvement that the people are asking for. What are your expectations? What kind of improvements are you hoping for?
Well, I know Ghana has been a beacon of peace in Africa in terms of elections and electoral practices, so far as those things are concerned. And we are going to improve it this time. We are going to improve it this time. This time is going to be, we are going to get more accolades to it. And as I can say, as a member of the Regional Security Council, by my position, I'm a member of the Regional Security Council. The things that we put in place, I can tell you that it's going to be one of the most peaceful most peaceful elections, and Ghana is going to be one of the most peaceful in terms of elections, so far as elections concerned in Africa and in the world.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're always welcome. Well, I'll give a general advice to all the people who are coming to vote. We have done it before. This is not the first time we are doing it. Ghana is a very peaceful country. A lot of people take a cue from Ghana, the way we do our things, the way we go about our things. We should not do anything that will tarnish the image and the peace that we're enjoying. And I know Ghanaians will not fail us this time. They have always been good. They have always been giving us peace. And I know they are going to do it as they've been doing that. And I can see by the close of elections today, you see that the peace that we're enjoying will be even bit stronger. You see more party. Last time I was at the rally, and I was surprised to see MPP, NDC, the two major political parties, working together in a flashpoint, like Asamase constituency. You know, that is where I'm a municipal chief executive. During the last health walk of both NDC and MPP, the two of them were doing it at the same municipal, the same constituency. And I was surprised, and it was quite nice to see MPP, NDC moving together, doing the same work at a point in time. Nobody touches anybody. Sometimes MPP will sway off and get into the middle of the NDC. They will be laughing and they will leave the person. Sometimes NDC to also find their way into the midst of the MPP. NDC will find their way in the midst of MPP, and they'll be laughing, they'll be talking, and they will be leaving. So the way we have been coexisting as different political parties coming from the different political background with the different ideologies, I know we get to where we want to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
MPP is winning. What should I should think? We are winning, and it's going to be massive. You lesbians, I think you have few hours to go. We are going to move from 137 to at least 155 to 160 seats in these year elections. And Dr. Bawumia is going to win by 51 to 52.5 percent of the popular vote that will be cast. And I'm telling you, the voter turnout is going to be massive, especially in the Ashanti region here. They are going to say thank you to Nana Akufo-Addo and also say thank you to Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia for such a wonderful management of the affairs of the country in the midst of pandemic. And I know the free SHS people are going to garnish it for us with their about 1.7 million votes. They are going to give it to us as a free gift for giving them access to the various senior high schools within the country. Thank you. Too. Yeah.
And that was Bernard Akede there speaking to one of the members of the constituency, former member of a constituency, former member of a parliament in that constituency that they are. As you can see scenes there from a polling unit at Adiebe, Kumasi, Ghana, as Ghanaians are casting their votes for the general elections. It's a two-man house race so far, we see, between the NPP and the NDP.
Well, looking forward to see exactly how today is going to wrap up. So far, it seems everything seems to be working on schedule, just as Bennett had told us from earlier on this morning when he told that everything seems pretty okay.
Yes.
Diverse views from our different guests that we had for today.
Oh, yes, indeed.
I must say that there's plenty to discuss when it comes to the issues that Ghanaians are going through, quite similar to what Nigerians have been going through.
Oh, goodness.
It's the specific nature of the issues on digitalization and also the mining instance for me, but then again, the economy. So one of our guests talked about the cedi versus the dollar, I think $17 per 17 cedis to a dollar. And I did the calculation, so that will translate to 1,800 naira per dollar. Currently, what is it for Nigeria now?
As of yesterday, it was 1,513 naira to a dollar. That's what it was.
I'm just trying to get an idea of what the situation is so that we can actually relate to the situation in Ghana right now.
I mean, but the most important thing for us at this time is basically just to, exactly first time is to just follow the elections, look at the promises that are in this mandate, the manifestos for both parties, and see and hope that as the turnout is coming out, the voices of the people of Ghana is heard, and this exercise is as free and transparent as possible. There's also been talks about mismanagement, miscommunication, mismanagement and misinformation. Misinformation and disinformation, deepfakes. And so as they're talking about digitalization and onboarding citizens into the digital sphere, a lot needs to be done when it comes to sensitization for them to be able to identify what is disinformation, what is misinformation, and what exactly is deepfake as well. And also, we hope to see whether or not in the next 4 years, Nigeria might start to participate, or West Africa might start to digitalize its electoral process. It might be a long journey, Mizuno, don't you think so?
I think we're already on it. I think we're pioneering that when it comes to elections as far as Nigeria is concerned. We will continue to bring you updates and visuals from the processes that are going on across Ghana today. Only if you keep it here on News Central TV. As you have seen, we have our correspondents on ground to give us all the information that we need. It's very amazing, and once again, I must point out the ease of movement for our correspondents as they move across Ghana, which is something we do with some difficulty here, but I must commend the process there in Ghana. It's a very interesting one, and yeah, I mean, hey, like my mother always say, how does she put it again? You celebrate a good thing.
Oh, yes,
basically.
indeed.
So
of course.
Let's start by celebrating that and hoping that we can emulate where we need to be.
Yes, indeed. This is where we draw the curtains for this. This is where we draw the curtains, I would say, for this broadcast. But I must tell you that it continues. At 1 p.m., we'll pass the baton on to the next guest, as well as to the next anchors who will continue to give you live updates. But in the meantime, be aware that our correspondent, Afia Hagen, is in the capital, Accra, as well as Bernard Akede, who is in Kumasi, Ghana, and they will be giving us more live updates, more reports will be coming in. In the meantime, as we close the curtains, it's good morning from us.
Good morning, but we're going to leave you with this report by Bernard Akede as we say goodbye and ask you guys to join us again tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock for Breakfast Extra this time. It's goodbye from us. Bye-bye.
Good morning.
media's role in any election is pivotal. From educating voters to disseminating timely and accurate information, journalists are at the heart of democracy. In Ghana, radio remains a key medium for reaching the masses, and in Kumasi, journalists are leaving no stone unturned in their preparations.
When it comes to the election results to our listeners and our audience, and also to provide information that connects to the incidents that happens during election coverage. But the most important thing is to provide them with the updates, the information, what is happening, who is winning what are the incidents surrounding the election and whatever. These are the areas that we are very much focused on.
However, with the rise of social media, misinformation has become one of the greatest threats to electoral transparency.
Decided to take our crew through the various, websites or the various, ways in which they can address or they can tackle this particular issue. Particularly, we have decided to tell them that whatever information that they get, it needs to be verified. They need to, be sure that it is credible before we put it out there. So it's really a very big issue, and this year we have organized a number of trainings on this particular issue, just to ensure that the information that we chain out to the public is credible, it's factual.
For journalists in Kumasi, this election is not just about covering the stories, it's about demonstrating the strength of Ghana's press freedom.
Without the freedom to operate, it could really affect the kind of information we give to our audience. So that's one critical challenge that possibly we may face, but I want to believe that it will not be something that we will encounter, because the various security officials have assured us that we will be allowed to operate freely and to ensure that we give accurate information to our audience.
From voter education to combating fake news, the media is taking on a heavy responsibility to ensure Ghanaians have access to accurate and timely information on Election Day. In Kumasi for News Central, I'm Bernard Akede.